Sirens, Slammers, and Service, a podcast for female first responders by female first responders. My name is Nikki Clucci, and I will be your host. As a former correctional officer in Alberta for almost 2 decades and the founder of Blue Line Fitness Testing, which provides law enforcement fitness testing and first responder wellness workshops, I started this podcast as a way for female first responders to share the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of their daily work. I want to showcase the unique perspectives, skill sets, and personalities that women bring to a first responder career and share their stories. So get ready to laugh your ass off, learn a whole bunch, and be inspired by some pretty badass women. Let's go. What up, guys? Welcome back. This is episode number 5. I cannot believe we've already done 5 episodes. I'm super excited to be back, and I hope that you guys are loving this podcast as much as I am loving making it. It has literally been so fun chatting with some of my old friends, getting to be able to meet up with people again and kind of hear their stories and be inspired by their journeys. And again, like good friends of mine that even I am learning things about their jobs and about their journeys as we're discussing things. So there is still so much goodness in store for you guys, but I thought that I would jump back on here today and I would tell you a little bit more about my journey, and I really wanted it to be kind of a funny one today. I wanted to share some of the funniest stories I had while working at the jail, and believe me, there are a lot, but I had to handpick a few of the funniest ones. So I will be doing an episode on some of the bad stories and some of the kind of traumatic stuff that we went through, again, just to kind of share both sides of the story. There is a lot of funny things that happen in the jail, but there is a lot of kind of things that sit with you and stay with you. But I'll jump right into it. So when I first started at the jail, obviously you guys know if you've listened to episode number 1, I was working on the female units, and I was there for about 2 years. I had some really great partners, and my first ever code. So a code is essentially an emergency situation. We have a bunch of different ones, and we have different code names that we call on the radio, or at the time we had a voice call system, which was kind of an intercom system. And we would call, so a code 66 is an inmate fight. And so we were on the female unit, and all of a sudden this fight broke out between these 2 inmates. I don't even remember who they were, but it was my very first fight, and I was like, oh my God. And so I like hit the button, and of course you're supposed to say it really calmly, you know, like code 66, 5, Bravo, code 66, 5, Bravo is how you're supposed to say it. Of course I'm like, code 66, 5, Bravo, and like losing my mind on the voice call, which wasn't good. So then I had to stop myself and be like, code 66, 5, Bravo, code 66, 5, Bravo. And then you kind of hang up off the voice call and off you go. And of course, I'm like ready to go running out there. And my partner at the time, she's actually still in corrections. She's working down at Calgary Remand Center now. She just kind of grabbed my arm. She's like, what are you doing? And I was like, well, don't we go out there? Like, don't we split them up? Don't we like stop them from fighting each other? And she was like, no. Why would we put ourselves in danger? We're not going out there. We'll just let them fight. And then she looked out there and she's like, it's not even that good of a fight. Why would you even go out there? And so it was very kind of different for me to have to just stay in the bubble and watch them fight, and wait until the response team came. Again, it was actually, now that I think back on it, I'm like, it was a pretty pathetic fight. There was nothing really worthwhile. You didn't really need to go out there and separate them, because they kind of got tired after about 30 seconds of slapping at each other and pulling each other's hair, and then they stopped. So my very first code, highly entertaining. My second kind of code that I had, I mean, we had a couple more after that, but the second one that I really remember was when I was working over on the opposite side of the floor. So on the 5th floor of the old jail, we had 2 female units, and then on the other side, we had like a mental health, slow functioning. At the time we put all our transgendered inmates over there. It was kind of just a mishmash of everybody that was on the one side, and then the other side was our disciplinary segregation unit. So any inmate that had done something that was considered against the rules in the jail could be institutionally charged, and then they could do what we call digger time, which essentially was disciplinary time. So they'd be put into a baby doll. So a baby doll essentially is security-based clothing. It's rip-proof, supposedly. It's basically like a really heavy kind of like dress that they would have to wear, and they would be in that with a baby doll blanket, and no pillow, for up to 14 days in disciplinary time. Basically, so you go to the penalty box and you're supposed to feel shame about what you did and learn from it. Doesn't usually work out that way, but It is what it is. And so on the Five Charlie side, I was working on the Five Charlie side. Again, I was working with a very senior staff at the time, and these two mental health inmates, low functioning, again, brain damage. Usually, I think it was probably from substance abuse, but they started fighting, and so of course, fight breaks out. So I call the code, like code 66 5 Charlie, code 66 5 Charlie. And my partner comes running over from the other side and he's like, "Why the fuck did you call the code?" And I was like, "Well, they're fighting. Like it's a fight. Like we have to call the code." He's like, "That's not a fucking code." And he goes out there and he just like rips these two guys apart and he's like, "You go to your cell and you go to your cell." And it was like a parent splitting apart, two scrapping siblings. And of course they do, right? They stop and then they stomped off to their cells and they're, calling each other names as they stomp off. So the code team like gets there, and obviously, again, I talked about it a little bit in episode number 1. They're coming from different floors. They're having to be put there by the elevators and central control, and the whole building stops when there's a code. So the code team responds, and they kind of walk through the door, and they're like, "Well, where's the fight?" And the senior officer's like, "Oh, the rookie just called the code. She doesn't know what she's doing." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So the response team kind of looks in, they giggle, they kind of walk away. Okay, no problem. And so then my partner comes in and I'm like, "Well, but it was a fight. Why wouldn't we call the code?" And he's like, "For shit like that, we don't bother the response team. We just deal with it." And I was like, "Okay, good to know. Like this is how I learned. So we don't call codes for that. We don't go out on the unit when they're actually scrapping, unless you can physically pull them apart and they're low functioning, I guess. And we don't waste the code team's time." Gotcha. Okay, I'm on it. I know what I'm doing now. So that was kind of two of my first codes that were kind of funny. Another story I have, again, working back on the female unit, we had these two twins that had come in. And again, this was years and years and years ago. Like I want to say like 2003, 2004 maybe. And they had been found basically living off the land somewhere out by Stony Plain, kind of like out west of Edmonton. They've been living in the bush. They were like filthy, like so dirty. Their clothes were growing into their skin and just disgusting, disgusting. Personal hygiene had not been followed for many, many, many months. But they were twins, and one of the twins had lost her hand somehow. We don't know how, but she only had kind of a stump at her wrist. And so the two were sharing a cell, and if you know the old remand, you know that the plumbing wasn't the greatest, and inmates used to flush, well, they do still now, flush garbage down the toilets instead of putting it in the garbage. I don't know why. We had garbage cans, we had garbage bags that they could put it in, but they would flush it down the toilet. So inevitably, the toilets would back up. And the toilets ended up backing up from a different cell and backed up into their cell. And so these two twins start banging on the door, and they're freaking out, and you can see the toilet water's coming out of their cell. And I'm like, "Oh, okay." So out we go. We open up the pipe chase. We turn the water off. Kind of get it all set, and then we're like, "Okay, come on out, guys. Like, bring out all the stuff that's damaged. If it's bedding, whatever, put it in the biohazard bag, and we'll get rid of it." But now you guys need to mop out your cell. You need to clean up the cell because we don't have cleaners. Like we have cleaners that clean, the staff stations and clean like the non-secure areas, but inmates are responsible for cleaning cells, units, kind of common areas, those types of things. And so these twins were like, "What? What do you mean we have to clean this?" And I was like, "Well, if you don't want to sleep in shit water, you need to clean your cell. So here's a mop, here's a bucket, here's some bleach, like here's some rags, right?" And so the twins, they said, "Well, can we have some rubber gloves?" And I was like, "Yeah, for sure you can have rubber gloves. That's a, totally fair ask. You're going to be wading through shit water. So yeah, here's some rubber gloves." So the one twin that has two hands gets the rubber gloves on. And she starts, I don't even know what she was doing, pissing around in the cell, like not cleaning, just kind of pissing around. And so the other twin, who has one hand and one non-hand, the sister gives her the mop and puts a rubber glove on her stump. And like, I don't know why it's still so funny to me today, but it was like this rubber glove, like flopping off
like off the edge of her stump, and she's trying to mop, and it's an absolute gong show. Like shit water just getting pushed all over the unit, and instead of like, mopping it up and kind of wringing it out, she's just kind of like pushing it around. Now it's going onto the carpet in the common area. All the other cons are freaking out because obviously now there's going to be shit water in the common area, and it's a total gong show. And the one twin looks at the other twin and she's like, well, what the fuck are you doing? You're just fucking around in the cell. So they end up getting into an argument, and now they're kind of like flapping at each other with these shit gloved hands. And the one that doesn't have a hand is kind of just like flapping her glove at her twin's face, and it's got shit water on it. And I was like, I don't get paid enough to deal with this right now. I had to go out and basically break up this twin fight over shit water and gross rubber gloves, and then separate them and put them into opposite cells. So, if you ever think that, your job is boring or you don't like your job, just think that you could be doing that. You could be going out and separating twins that are basically throwing shit water at each other. So, there's that. Another really funny code that I had actually. Well, it was kind of funny, kind of a little scary. It was Christmas time. It was actually New Year's Day, and I had been to a wedding the night before, so it was New Year's Eve. Stayed at the wedding until, oh God, probably like 2, and then had to get up for day shift the next day. So you're up at 5, quarter after 5. So I'd had, like maybe 3 hours of sleep, really hungover. But of course, it's, New Year's Day. We're thinking it's going to be a quiet day, right? It's not going to be too bad. And I was working in the basement at the time in A&D. And at the time, if you were the female that was in the basement, you responded to all medical codes. So code 99 is a medical code, because we would bring up the medical bag that we had in A&D that had oxygen and had a bunch of the medical supplies. And then there would be obviously other people responding from other areas, but your responsibility as the female in the basement was to respond to medical codes. So I came into work, I'm super hungover. I had these really great partners. Again, awesome team. My A&D team was like just the best. I love them all. And they could see I was rough. And so they're like, Nikki, why don't you go lay down in the back, and like have a little nap and pull it together. And I was like, okay, thanks guys. So I went into the back, and we had this big bin of, we called them bedrolls. So essentially inmates' blankets and sheets. So these were all like nice, clean blankets and sheets. And so I kind of climbed into the bedroll bin, and I'm laying there and I'm like, oh my God, I feel like a bag of shit. Like I made poor choices last night. I should not have done this, right? And I'm just kind of laying there. I'm kind of dozing. I'm not really. And I hear, of course, a code at 8 o'clock in the morning. Code 99 2 Delta, code 99 2 Delta. So 2 Delta was our medical unit. And so I'm like, oh my God. So I'm sitting up and I'm trying to pull myself out of this bedroll bin. And one of the boys yells, don't worry, Nikki, we'll go for you. And I was like, oh, praise Jesus. I love you, boys. Thank you, right? So I kind of lay back down in the bedroll bin. And I had a sweater on, and I kind of had my arms tucked into the sweater. So I didn't have my arms in my sleeves. And then in about 30 seconds later, all available females report to 2 Delta, all available females report to 2 Delta. So I'm like, oh, fuck. So I'm trying to get out of the bedroll bin with my arms stuck in my sweater. My boots aren't done up. I'm like a hot mess. I'm running. I'm trying to keep my boots on. I'm trying to get my arms through my sweater. I get on the elevator, and I'm ripping on my boots, like trying to like lace them up, make sure that I'm ready to go, because now I'm like, oh, okay, it was a medical code, but maybe she was faking. Maybe it's a scrap now. Like, what are we going into, right? So I go busting through the door, and there's me and another girl that had responded from the 5th floor. And so we go basically busting through the door, get to the door of the unit. We're like looking at the officers like, what? They're like, it's cell, whatever it was. And so we're like, so we go in, both of us expecting that we're scrapping with somebody, right? So we go ripping around the corner, and we, open into the cell door, and the inmate is sitting on the bunk in the corner, and there's 2 nurses, and they're crouched down by the toilet. And I'm like, what the fuck? What's going on? Like, what? And the nurses obviously were dealing with what they were dealing with, which I'll get to. And the inmate was just kind of looking at me, and she's like, what? And I was like, well, what's going on? Are you scrapping? Like, what's going on? And then out of behind me, I hear this little meh, meh. And I was like, what the fuck is that? I turned around, and in the corner by the toilet is the tiniest baby you have ever seen. Tiniest, like 1 pound baby. Tiny, 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 tiny. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? So the nurse is trying to obviously save this baby and is trying to give oxygen, but we don't have baby masks and we don't have baby things, right? We're not a hospital. We're built to deal with adults. So this nurse is doing the best he can to kind of save this baby. EMS is on the way. I'm looking at the con and I'm like, "Are you okay? Like what happened? Oh my God!" Like clearly this baby is very much premature. This inmate obviously wasn't ready to have this baby. Holy shit, what's going on? And the inmate's like, yeah, 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 I'm fine. She's acting kind of weird. And I'm like, this is kind of odd. And so I'm saying, I'm saying to the nurse, I'm like, hey, what do you need me to do? I'll do whatever I need to do. So, he's kind of, okay, get me this and help me with this and get me some blankets and get me some sheets. And, okay. And so we're running around, running around. EMS arrives. And so now they're working on the baby. And the EMS says, we're pretty sure that she tried to abort this baby herself. We're pretty sure that that's what happened, and then it just actually induced labor. So you need to dig in the toilet and see, what she used, or see if there's any, is the placenta in there, like what's going on. And so at this point in time, I've never had kids, so I don't know really much about labor. I don't really know much about delivery. I sure as fuck don't know anything about a placenta. And I'm looking in this toilet, and the toilet is filled with blood and other things. And I'm like, and I look at the nurse, and he looks at me, and he goes, paper, rock, scissors for who has to dig in the toilet. And I was like, motherfucker, okay. So we paper, rock, scissors. Luckily, thankfully, praise Jesus, I won, and he had to stick his hand in the toilet and dig around as I'm trying not to gag. And so nothing in the toilet, thankfully. So we don't really know what she used to try and obviously abort the baby. But then the inmate stands up, and the other staff that had responded with me was my same age as me. I think we were both like 24, maybe 25. And the inmate goes, oh, gross, gross. And she kind of kicks her leg out and kind of shakes her leg. And I'm like, what are you doing? And she's like, oh, gross, something is there. And she kicks her leg out, and the placenta falls out of the side of her sweatpants and onto the floor. And both the staff member and I jump back and we're like, oh my God. And then without without thinking, I looked at the con and I was like, don't worry, it's totally normal. That's totally normal. This is me, who's never had a kid, who has no idea about a placenta. Pretty sure it's not supposed to end up on the floor. Pretty sure it's not supposed to just fall out of your pant leg down onto the floor. And the other female staff member that had responded, she was quite senior and she had two kids, and I think they were probably in their late teens by that point. And she leans over to me and she goes, "That is not fucking normal. Why are you telling her that this is normal when you've never had a kid?" And I was like, "I don't know, it just came out. I just panicked," right? So we had to scoop up the placenta, take the con, get her sorted out, send her to the hospital, and off she went. That was New Year's Day. So we delivered a New Year's Day baby at the jail. And amazingly, the baby actually survived and was adopted by a family. And as far as I know, which is crazy to think, that kid could be like 18 now. Oh my God, that's insane. I literally just did the math. But as far as I know, there was no ill effects to the baby. The baby was fine, no mental deficiencies, no physical deficiencies. So it really was a true miracle, miracle baby. So that was definitely a super cool kind of code to be part of. Another kind of Christmas time. It always happens around Christmas and holidays when you work in a jail. It's just kind of the flow of things, I guess. Inmates get a little restless or get a little crazy around the holidays. And I mean it, granted, they're away from their families. And usually there's a lot of trauma associated with the holidays from family or from other issues that, inmates have had during the holidays. Again, lots of stress, usually increased alcohol use on the streets, things like that. So the world goes a little crazy around the holidays. But this inmate, again, I was working down in the basement, and she had come in. This might have actually been in the same Christmas or the same holiday. I don't know, it all kind of blends in, but she had come in, and again, in episode 1, we talked about our job as the female in the basement was to strip search all the females. So I'm like, okay, let's go to the back, and she's kind of an older lady, probably in her, like I say, older now. She's probably in her early 40s, like I am now. But at the time, she seemed like an older lady. And so I brought her to the back, and I'm like, okay, strip down, so when they strip, like when they're getting naked, we're writing down their clothes, itemizing their clothes, and then it goes into a property bag, and then we basically hang on to their clothes till they get out, and then they put their clothes back on and out they go. So she's kind of stripping down, and I'm, white shirt, black pants, black socks, blue underwear, white bra, writing it down or whatever, black shoes. And as we're doing this, we kind of talk to them, like, okay, like, do you know your orc number? Blah, blah, blah. And so she's kind of naked. And from there, once they're naked, we strip search them. And then we have showers. So we send them to the showers, get them to shower, wash their hair, wash their bodies, do what they need to do if they need to brush their teeth, right? A lot of these people are coming in and they haven't. Again, personal hygiene has not been at the forefront of their care for however long they've been on the street. And so we, shower them and get them changed. So I'm about ready to strip search her. And so she's standing there naked, and all of a sudden this pill falls down. And I'm like, the fuck? Because she has no clothes on. So I'm like, okay, so it couldn't have fallen out of her pocket. It couldn't have, right? So I'm like, show me your hands. I'm thinking maybe, she put a pill in her hand and she's trying to keep it, and she's thinking she can cheek it or she can, take it with her. So I said, show me your hands. So she shows me her hands. I go front and back. Okay. I said, okay, show me your feet. So she picks up her feet and kind of, shows me the bottoms of them. And I'm like, okay, well, nothing on her feet. So I'm thinking to myself, like, what the fuck? And then all of a sudden another pill falls to the floor. And I'm like, okay, what the fuck? So I'm looking around. I'm like, did she put them up somewhere? Like, did she tuck them somewhere and they're kind of dropping down? And I'm like, okay, no. And then all of a sudden, 2 more pills fall. And I'm like, she's got these fucking things hooped. So they're in her vagina. And I'm like, I go, do you have pills on you? She's like, no. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, do you got pills on you? No. I was like, do you have anything concealed that I need to know about? She's like, nope. Boop, boop. 2 more pills fall down. I'm like, bitch, you're fucking kidding me. Like, give me the pills now. And she's like, no. And I was like, give me the fucking pills now. She's like, no, you're gonna have to fucking come and get them. And I was like, oh, I fucking will come and get them. I will reach up into your vagina and I will rip those fucking pills out. She like stops and looks at me. Now, obviously, everybody knows you cannot actually do that. You cannot put your hand, and not the fuck like I'd ever want to put my hand in somebody else's vagina and pull pills out. But you can't. You cannot forcibly remove them. And so I was like, so she kind of stops and looks at me. And she could tell that I'm like, as serious as I can be, I'm going to forcibly take these drugs off of you. So she's like, fucking bitch, fine. So she puts her leg up on the bench and reaches in and pulls out the entire toe of a sock. It was a blue, and I remember this vividly. It was a blue and white striped sock. And the entire toe of the sock was filled with pills. Filled, like so full. There's a reason they were falling out. And I was like, what the fuck? So I'm like, bring it over here, put it on the counter, which is like, huh! But also like, there's nowhere else I can put it, right? So put it on the counter. I get a rubber glove. I'm like, put it on top of the rubber glove. Obviously, I have gloves on. I'm like, what else do you have up there? She's like, nothing. I don't have anything else up there. I was like, I swear to God, I know you have something else up there. Give me whatever the fuck else you have up there. She's like, there's nothing else up there. I was like, then squat and cough. So if you're a female and with our pelvic floor, if you cough, the pelvic floor muscles automatically relax and let go. So trying to keep something up there is very challenging when you cough. It's made even more challenging when you're in a squatting position. So that's usually how we get girls to release what they have up there. Again, sometimes girls have very strong Kegels and they can keep it up there, but usually that's kind of the fail-safe. It'll fall out, especially if you make them squat and cough numerous times. So I'm like, squat and cough, squat and cough. So she squats down, she coughs, another baggie falls out. I was like, motherfucker. I said, do you have anything else up there? No, I don't have anything else up there. I was like, then squat and cough again. I was like, we will be here all motherfucking night. You will squat and cough until that vagina is empty. And so she's like, fine. So she puts her foot back up on the bench, reaches in, pulls out 2 more baggies, puts them on the counter. And I'm like, is that everything? She's like, yes. And I was like, are you fucking sure? She's like, yes, that's everything. I don't have anything else up there. And I'm looking at this pile of drugs and I'm thinking, my God, she better not have anything else up there because that vagina is humongous. So then I said, okay, squat and cough one more time. So she squats and coughs, nothing. Again, squats and coughs again, nothing. I'm like, okay, I'm pretty sure that this is all she's got. And whatever else she has left is probably really, really tiny if she did have anything else. So I'm like, okay. So we strip her, do the rest of the strip search, make her squat and cough again, and then she gets to get in the shower. And so then, and I'm back there by myself, which nowadays we don't usually use strip with another female officer, but back then you stripped by yourself. And so I kind of bundle it all together. I get it into this plastic bag that we have, like an evidence bag, and I kind of take it to the front, and the guys, it's all guys, and I'm the only female down there, and the guys are like, "What the fuck do you got there?" And I was like, "Well, a treasure trove, boys, a treasure trove." And so then I had to itemize it all and basically, like heat seal it all and show it all. So there was over 96 pills. There was a bag of weed. There was 2 cigarettes, like just plain cigarettes, and then there was a little baggie of what we couldn't identify. So it was a powder, but when we NIC tested it, so NIC test is a drug test, it just came up as inconclusive. So we didn't really know what it was. But it was a massive cache of drugs. So obviously we called in EPS, and EPS laid charges. And this female was quite upset that I'd caught her with her stash, because she would have made a pretty penny when she was up on the floor if she'd been able to sell it, and or would have probably overdosed if she'd taken all the pills or taken all the drugs that was up there, especially not knowing what that powder was. So it was a pretty good catch. But again, it was an entire tote full of pills, and they were just falling out. So, that's a lucky find for me. Another funny code I had was when I was in central control. So again, episode 1, I talked about how I moved from our admissions and discharge area, and I went up to central control. Central control is where we open and close all the doors for everybody, and we are the ones that now run the code team. So when the code goes off, you're the one that's opening the doors for where the response team is working, getting the elevators ready, and getting them ready to go to the code. And so you train up, and at the end of your training, you have a mock code. So everybody on shift knows that the mock code is coming, except for you, because obviously if you knew, it wouldn't be training. And so everybody knows, okay, they're going to call it, but they call it like it's a real one. They don't call it like a mock. They call it like a real one, but they know that it's fake. And so my boss, again, I don't know, he had this inflated sense of who I was and my abilities, I feel, but he decided that he was going to really, really test me, and he was going to make the code in one of the hardest places in the jail, and that was in our visits area. And the reason it's so hard is because the elevators opened both ways. So the front doors were like 99% of the time was the front doors. The elevators would open, the inmates would get out into the sally port, which would be 2 locked doors that kind of locked into it like a vestibule. And then a staff would be there to either open one of the doors and let them through, or the staff would be escorting them and would take them through the door. And for visits, the elevators opened up the opposite way. And you had to always be careful, because you never knew what inmates were on the other side of the visitation doors. So if you opened up the elevator doors and there was a protective custody inmates on the inside, and you were letting out general population inmates, that could be extremely dangerous. So you always had to be very careful as to, where the inmates, or where the doors were opening and how people were getting off. The other thing was that visits was on our main floor, and the opposite side of the sally for main floor, so where the front doors opened, led to either the gymnasium for the inmates, and that was off to the right side, or the left side was the freedom door, we called it. And it was basically the door to get to the outside. So if inmates were being released, they were being escorted up by a staff member, they would go through the freedom door and be escorted out of the building. Or it would be for staff would come up, they would go to the left, and then we would go out through the freedom door and essentially towards our staff room and our locker rooms and things like that. But again, very non-secure area. And so you had to be very careful. Again, you never opened the freedom door when there was inmates in the sally, because they could make a break for it and then they'd be in a non-secure area. So again, all things you're kind of trying to learn as you're doing this, and then thinking about getting the elevators there. And the other thing about elevators is that sometimes people are already on them when the code goes off, because you don't know, you never know when a code's going to happen. And sometimes a code would go off and you would have a load of inmates on the elevator already, or you'd have a staff member on the elevator, and you you'd basically have to, we called it dump them. You'd have to dump them somewhere so you could get that elevator free and send it to the floor that needed the response team to get on it. But you also then had to be cognizant of where you were dumping these inmates. Were you dumping them into a secure area? Were you dumping them? Did they have a staff member with them, or were they just going up in the elevator to be met by a staff member? Were you putting them into an area where there was other inmates that they couldn't mix with? Because not only can certain inmates not mix because of protected custody versus general pop, but sometimes there was just keep seps. So keep seps, keep separates would be, two inmates that were rival gang members, two inmates that were co-accused, two inmates or four inmates or 10 inmates, or whatever, that just had beef from the streets and would fight each other the second they saw each other. So you had to be very careful kind of where you were dumping these inmates. And so it was, and it was lunchtime. So, even better. So now half the staff are on lunch, which means that they're responding from not their units, which is where in the morning or the beginning of shift, we would preset the elevators for the response team. So we would know response team was coming off of this floor, this floor, this floor, and this floor. And you would preset the doors so that if a code went off, you could hit one button and two doors would open. So normally they're always interlocked. So one opens, then that one has to shut, and then the next one can open. But for a code, obviously we want them to be able to get through the doors as fast as possible and not have to wait for the interlock. So we had an override system where we could get them through the doors quicker. And so you would preset those doors, and then when the code went off, you could hit that button and it would basically unlock the doors and the response team could come out. And then your job was to essentially have the elevators there waiting for them on those floors, ready to go. And so I'm in Central and I have no idea this code is coming. And again, normally you have two of you in Central. Normally there's, when a code goes off, one of you is running the elevators, one of you is running the doors, or one of you is kind of watching the cameras to see what's going on. Can you see what's happening for the code? Can you give the code team a little bit of information in the elevators? Like, hey, yeah, there's 6 guys up there, like they're right outside the door, they're right inside the door. So they kind of know what to expect when they get up there and they're not going in blind. But of course, this was at lunchtime. And so my partner was on lunch, who wasn't really on lunch. He was outside the door because he knew the mock code was going to go off. And and the door is locked to Central. So you can't get in unless we buzz you in. And so I'm, working along and I'm happily moving people. And I'm like, yeah, it's good. It's a good day. It's a great day. I'm almost done my training. I'm feeling a little bit more comfortable. I feel good about this. And all of a sudden the code comes in, code 66 visits, code 66 visits. So I'm like, holy fuck. Oh my God. So the staff would call the code. They would call it into us in Central, and it would come up on it was our 299 system. So the normal voice call system, where it's just how you used to call the doors, would kind of go boop boop, like a nice soft boop boop, and then you'd be like Central or voice call, and they would say, God, I had to think about that. Yeah, voice call, and they'd say, oh, can I, blah blah blah, we're going here and here. And you'd be like, okay, and you'd be like, buzz the doors, off they went. Make sure you're watching them. The code voice call was on the left-hand side, and it was super loud. So it would go boop, boop, and it would scare the piss out of you every single time because it was super loud. But usually, again, because the person on the other side would be panicked, right? Even though they're trying to stay calm, usually, again, if it's an emergency system or emergency situation, you're fucking jacked up, right? And so it goes boop, boop, and it's like code 66 visits, code 66 visits. And I'm like, holy fuck, oh my God. So then we would have to then all page it to the rest of the building so that the response team knows that there's a code. So then we would go on and we would all page code 66 visits, code 66 visits, right? But you always had to log off of the voice call, the all page system, right? And so of course I'm panicking. So the code comes in, I'm fucking jacked up, I'm freaking out. It's my first code. I'm like, oh my fucking God, oh my God, oh my God. So I'm like, okay, think about what you need to do, Nikki, think about what you need to do. So I'm like, hit the button, getting the elevators, I go to page, I'm like, code 66 visits, code 66 visits, but I don't log off. So now I'm all paging over the entire building and I'm like, oh fuck, oh fuck, oh fuck, oh shit balls, oh God, okay, the elevators are going, okay, oh fuck, oh my God, it's lunchtime, oh God, okay, people are coming from here. And I am like literally all paging my entire conversation to myself as I'm panicking. And the whole building can hear me as I'm like freaking out over this code. And so of course my partner starts banging on the door because he wants to tell me like, you're all paging, like everyone can hear you. And I'm like, So then, of course, instead of like calmly being like, open the door for my partner, I'm like, oh my God, you think I have fucking time to open the door for you right now? And of course, I'm still all paging this. And then people start calling and they're trying to tell me, Nikki, the all page is still on. And I'm like, who the fuck is phoning me right now? There's a fucking code on. All page across the whole entire building. And now I have this code. I finally figured it out. Obviously, the phone keeps ringing. I'm like, what the fuck? Oh, boop off, right? I beep off. And again, this is all happening in the span of seconds, right? But I beep off, and then I'm trying to get the elevators ready, and I'm trying to get them to the right place, and I'm trying to make sure that I don't have inmates and the freedom door, because now staff are coming from the lunchroom, so the freedom door is going to open. But there's inmates in the Sally because they were going to visits, and now I need the elevator, so I can't put them into visits because there's a fight in visits, so I have to keep them in the main Sally, and then I have to send up the elevators to pick up the other response team, and then try and yell through the intercom to the inmates that they have to go through towards the gymnasium and get them through the other side of the door so that I can open the freedom door to be able to get the staff members through that are responding. So again, obviously, I'm barking orders to the inmates. The inmates are like, fuck you, we're not doing it. I was like, get the fuck through the fucking door, like freaking out. The elevators are going up. Staff are coming from all different areas because obviously it's lunchtime. So I'm trying to get them there and I'm trying to do it and I'm fucking panicking. I finally get everybody down. I get the inmates to the door. I get the staff through the door. And who did I forget? I forgot the boss. And the boss has to be there, right? Because the boss has to see what's going on and the boss has to clear the code. And so he's standing there at the door with his hands in his pockets and he's just like looking at me through the window, but it's tinted, right? And he's just looking at me through the window and I'm like, what the fuck is he waiting for? And then I was like, oh fuck, the boss, shit, right? I'm so sorry. Like sent him through, right? Get him through. Obviously comes down, Kate, clear the code. He calls in, Kate, Miss Thompson, clear the code. And I'm like, okay. So I'm like, code 66 is clear, code 66 is clear. And then he comes into Central and he is like, so how do you feel about that code? And I was like, sir, that was a hot mess. He's like, he goes, no, you actually did pretty good. He's like, that was a really, like he said, I gave you the hardest one. It was really challenging. He said, the only thing you forgot was me. And really, that's not a big deal. You got the staff through, you got the inmates through safely. But next time, remember to turn your all page off. And I was like, yes, sir, I apologize. I'm very sorry for that. I will make sure. And he's like, or just try to swear less when you're on the all page. I was like, yes, sir, sorry about that. And then off he went. And I was like, oh my God, my partner came in. She's like, you all right, buddy? I was like, I think I just had a fucking heart attack. I need a break. I need a hot second here. Like, I need to go get a drink of water. I need to go for a walk. I need to let my heart like slow down. She was like, you did good. It was a really good code. And I'm like, it was not a good code. It was fucking awful. But thank you for the vote of confidence. So yeah, so that was my very first code in Central, and it was a bit of a shit show. Definitely a bit of a shit show. Um, Another great story I have was when I was working on the third floor, which was the men's unit. And it's not a code story, but we used to obviously have to do security checks every day, which was essentially like a search, kind of mini search through the unit. You check all the doors and windows, the bunks, make sure, toilets, make sure that nothing was loose. They haven't, tried to escape or anything like that. But then we also used it as a, cleanliness check for the inmates. Are the cells clean? Are the beds made? Are they living in filth? Are they hoarding food? Things like that. Because when you have a lot of people living, in a close quarters, you got to make sure that it's clean. And that was one of my huge things as an officer. I was huge on cleanliness. That was my number one. It better be fucking clean. And I never wanted shit on the walls. Those were my two diehards. And most of the inmates that knew me by that point, knew that those were my rules and that was my expectation. And it was, security check time, and I'd go out. And at the time, they have canteens, so they can go to canteen and they can buy pop and chips and chocolate bars and things like that once a week. And that's only if they have money. So if somebody has to come and give them money, in the States they call it commissary. In Canada we call it canteen. And so they would use their pop bottles. They'd obviously get a pop and then they'd keep the pop bottle for water or hot water or whatever, making brews usually, right? And brew again is just, they'd put oranges and bananas and fruit and bread and basically try and make homemade alcohol. Awful, disgusting. If it explodes, it's horrible. It stinks. It's just bleh, gross. Probably tastes like shit, right? But so I would always confiscate their pop bottles and I take them away and put them in the recycle bin and then take the recycling out. And so it kind of became a game with these inmates on the third floor because they knew that I would come and they knew cleanliness again and that I would take their pop bottles. So they would try every day to like hide them in like a new spot so that I wouldn't find them, right? And so I'd go out and I'd be doing my rounds, I'd be searching. I'm like, oh, scoop the pop bottle, scoop the extra sheets, scoop, whatever else I kind of saw, take it out and dump it. And there was one inmate and he used to hide it in like the craziest places. Like he would tuck it in the toilet paper rolls and kind of jam it in so it just looked like he had 2 or 3 toilet paper rolls in his cell with the pop bottle kind of, in the middle of them all hidden. Or he would put it, in a pile of clothing and make it look like it was just, plain laundry. He would put it in behind all the books and, try and make it look like it was just hidden, just books against the wall, things like that. And I would find it basically every single day, but it became kind of a game of, all right, where's the pop bottle today? And then they would just sit on the unit and be like looking at their cells, waiting until I came out. And if I came out with no pop bottle, you could tell they were just like, yes, we got one on her. And then when I'd come out with the pop bottle, they're like, fuck, because they'd have to wait another week until they could get another pop bottle if they only had limited amount of money, which is pretty funny. I used to also play a game on this was more so when I was a manager at the new remand. I would do called Word of the Day, and so I'd go out onto the units, and again, people people are of two thoughts really when it comes to dealing with inmates. People are either, yeah, I'm here to do the bare minimum and, I'm going to fucking get through the day and, if I have to talk to these guys, fuck, I don't want to talk to these guys. And then other officers are like, you know what, like the funnest part of my day is dealing with these guys because they're fucking funny, some of them, and some of the shit they do is funny and they are just people, right? And so that was kind of where I came from. And so I would say, okay, word of the day. And we had like instant coffees that we would get from canteen. And so I'd be like, okay, for 2 instant coffees, who can tell me what the word of the day means? And I would just pick like a random word. So one day, it was plethora. Okay, plethora. So what does plethora mean? And you'd see they'd all kind of perk up because free coffee, right? These inmates, a lot, again, especially inmates, if they didn't have canteen or they didn't have, money, free coffee, sweet, because they only would ever get it in the morning with their breakfast tray, right? And so you could tell they'd be like, and so they would run up to the panel and they'd be like, it means like this, it means this, it means this. And like, again, not the most intelligent usually inmates. And so, some of them would be way off. There'd be guys talking on the phone to their girlfriends being like, hey, oh my God, like, Google this, like, what's word of the day? Like, this is the word, what is it? And they'd be yelling, right? Their girlfriends are like, why am I Googling this word? And then they'd come running up like, yes, I won the coffees. Yes, I won the coffees. And it was actually really funny because I did it in Edmonton for, probably 5 years. And when I moved down to Red Deer as the DDO and I was out on the range, this inmate comes up to me. He's like, oh, hey, you're the word of the day boss. And I was like, what? He's like, word of the day, right? You used to do it on Pod 3. And I was like, yeah, I did. I was like, wow, you remember that? He's like, it was the best part of our day. Oh, I love learning new words. And I was just like, oh, okay, cool. Like you never think that a little thing like that has impact on these guys, but it did, right? Another thing I did when I was at Red Deer was I had at Christmas, again, we talk about holidays and kind of how it's hard. I had these, huge paper printout Christmas trees printed out, and I put one on each unit, and we had a Christmas tree decorating contest. And so I was like, yeah, you guys can decorate it with whatever. I printed off a bunch of, pictures of ornaments. And I was like, you guys can color the ornaments. You can, I want you to get creative and we'll have, the best decorated tree will win. And I tell you, like, again, lots of staff looked at me like, what the fuck is this, a fucking daycare? This fucking bullshit, like fucking bleh. But you know what? Those inmates were productively occupied coloring fucking Christmas ornaments and cutting up chip bags or tearing up chip bags to make tinfoil, like to make the tinsel, and making like some of them use their popcorn and put popcorn on like strings and stuff like that, so that they could put popcorn on their Christmas trees and drew stars and colored the trees, and that kept those guys occupied for 2 full weeks, and they were productively occupied. They weren't making shanks and they weren't making brews. I mean, maybe they still were, but a lot of the time they were working on this freaking Christmas tree. And I'm telling you, some of them were absolutely amazing. The creativity that these guys can come up with, the ideas that they can see to make things out of things that should not be made into those things is absolutely astounding. And I always used to say, if you guys use your powers for good instead of evil, you'd be so much further ahead in the world. And it was amazing. Like the things that they could come up with, the way that they would decorate things or create things. Another thing that inmates do is create kind of food creations out of canteen. And I actually had an idea. I didn't get a chance to kind of run it out, but I still think it would be a really great idea to create an inmate cookbook based on, share your recipes of how you make things from your canteen food so that other inmates can make it. They would make burritos out of, Doritos chips and leftover meat. And they would make apple crisp out of cookies and apples and pudding and oatmeal. They would make banana cream pie. They would make brownies. They would make eat more bars. They would make I'm trying to think of all, like, it was crazy. Like, and you'd go in and you'd see it, right? And it's like, well, it's food. And my rule again, it's got to be eaten by tonight, guys. Like, you can make it in the morning or you can keep it, but it's got to be eaten by tonight. We can't have, you can't be storing a bunch of food because then we get bugs and we get, gross things like that. And they were always really good, again, mostly because they were fucking starving and they wanted to eat what they'd created, right? But they were usually really good. And the amount of times they're like, hey, boss, you want to try a piece? And I'm like, yeah, no, I'm good. Thanks, guys. It does look really delicious though, but no, thank you. I'm good. But again, like out of simple, like cookies, chips, oatmeals, protein bars, not granola, but yeah, like oatmeals, their fruit, their bananas that they would get on their trays, and like a couple inmates would go in together and they would share, right, to get this treat at the end or to get this burrito or whatever at the end. Kimchi bowls, like they'd make those and add things to them, and just again the creativity just absolutely insane. So always love to see after canteen what they would come up with. And then, it would last about 2 days and then they'd be fucking starving because they have no impulse control, right? So they would get this $100 worth of canteen, and in 2 days they'd eaten $100 worth of junk food and it was gone. And then they would, like I said, starve for the next 5 days until canteen came back around. But again, I mean, creativity, very impressive, very, very impressive. So but yeah, those are a couple of like the kind of, funny stories that I have from working in the jail. There's so many more. Like as I talk and as I think about things, I'm like, oh, and this one and this one and this one and this one. So many funny ones. But again, I'll share them for future episodes. I'll definitely be dropping some funny stories into each of the shows that we're doing. And like I said, I'll be doing a show specifically on, some of the toughest calls I've done, some of the toughest codes I've had, some of the most traumatic things that I've had to see and witness and deal with, just again to kind of give you that opposite side of what corrections is like. But I do hope you enjoyed the funny stories. And if you have any funny stories that you want to share with us, or if you have any questions, I'd love to open up a Q&A session. So if you have questions about working in corrections or any of the other shows that we have of working in those roles, by all means, send me an Instagram message, send me a Facebook message, send me an email. The information's all in the show notes. And we'll definitely get your questions on the air, and we'll, read them out and share, who's asking them. So you'll get your 2 minutes of fame on the show, which is awesome. And I'd love to answer those questions and make sure that you kind of know what it is that you're looking for when you're hearing about these careers. And you're able to kind of move forward with a clearer sense of whether or not you want to jump into this, or if you're like, no, I'm good, no, thank you, because sometimes that is the decision. So, but yeah, I'm going to wrap it up today, guys. Our next episode is with one of my absolutely favorite people in the whole world, Angie Tetley. She is a recruiting sergeant with Calgary Police Service. We have a like action-packed show with her. We'll be breaking down, what the recruiting process is to get on with Calgary Police. We'll be talking about our time together representing Canada in the World Police Fire Games for the sport of rugby, and sharing some pretty funny stories as well. So I really hope you guys tune in to the next show, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Well, that's it for today, guys. Thanks so much for listening, tuning in, and sharing your time and energy with us. Make sure you check out our next episode starring another badass female first responder on Apple, Spotify, or TuneIn. And make sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Blue Line Fitness Testing. Stay safe and keep your head on a swivel.